Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. As you probably already know about the cancellation of the Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev fight, and that's because Beterbiev suffered a rip in his meniscus, which is the cartilage, the padding that goes between the joints in the knee. It's a very serious issue. Operation is needed, and he's going to be out for months. So what did the WBO do? They said, okay, well, we'll have an interim champion. But the interesting thing is what they've done with the two fighters that they've deemed will fight for the interim title are none other than JOSHUA Buatsi and Anthony Yarde. Now, this fight was proposed, some months ago, and apparently, according to Frank Warren and Ben Shalom, who are the fighters' respective promoters, Yarde is supposedly with Warren. At least Warren thinks he is. Anyway, Yarde says he's a free agent now, but there's a big dispute there. And Buatsi is with Boxer and Ben Shalom. They both said, well, we'd agreed terms to this fight anyway. It's a big domestic dust-up, and apparently Yarde said no, and I don't know. There's all sorts of he said, she said stuff going on. But because of this interim status, this fight has been resurrected. Now, does this mean that it will actually be finally finalized after all this time? Because you've got to wonder about Buatsi and his career. I mean, he moved over to Sky. He's had a couple of fights. He had the Dan Aziz fight, which is very entertaining, good domestic dust-up. But you would think at 32, with all that money invested in him, first of all by Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, and now by Sky. I mean, his services, I'm sure, were not cheap for Boxer to lure him across from Matchroom and DAZN. You'd think at 32 he should have had a world title fight by now. I mean, Yarde's had two of them. And to be honest with you, he hasn't earned either. He sort of leapfrogged over various ranked opponents to get to initially Kovalev, and he almost pulled it off in that fight. He just sort of collapsed exhausted from a jab. And then in the rematch, the second fight, he fought Beterbiev, gave him a very good fight, but ultimately got stopped. And it was a very tough fight for Beterbiev. Yarde showed a lot in that. It actually shows what Yarde, is he 33 now, or am I imagining that? Maybe he's not that old. But he's in his early 30s, I'd have thought. But it did show, that Beterbiev performance, exactly what he could have done if he'd been brought along sensibly. I did a video on this. I just think his career has been bizarrely navigated. He's never been British champ. He's never been Commonwealth champ or European champ. He went from fighting what you'd call C plus B minus fighters, maybe not even B minus fighters, to having two world title fights. I mean, you can't say Frank Warren hasn't delivered, in terms of opportunities and monetary reward. But if you want to build your legacy and if you want to be a world champ, I just think they went about it the wrong way, to be honest. They didn't prepare him for those title shots in no shape or form. Buatsi, I thought, was brought along very well, but hasn't had a world title shot. I thought he was, incrementally was brought along, and his skills were honed, and I thought, okay, he's ready for a world title fight now. And suddenly, he's fighting Dan Aziz, and now there's talk of him fighting Yarde. And I've got nothing against Anthony Yarde versus JOSHUA Buatsi. I think it's a good fight, good matchup. But I just feel that Buatsi's career has stalled. It's treading water. And at least this, latest domestic matchup would be for, a so-called version of the world title. I know the interim belts are all these belts, most of them are junk. But if you've got a fighter who is indisposed, genuinely indisposed, and just can't fight, for whatever reason, there are extenuating circumstances. I don't really have any problem with him being, shelved, so to speak. And, then you have an interim matchup. And then when the guy is ready, if his injuries are over, or if he's got his head together, whatever the situation is, then he fights the interim champ to make, in one sense, he makes a defense against an interim champ. That I don't mind. I don't mind that too much. But here's the thing. Let's say that Yarde wins against Buatsi. And then, so that makes him supposedly puts him on the fast track to a rematch with Beterbiev. Would anyone want to see that? I mean, the first fight was very good. Do you think he'd have a chance, or do you think think he's better prepared for Beterbiev if he was to fight him again? Okay, maybe if he beats Buatsi, yeah, that'd be an excellent win. But I don't know. The whole thing seems very convoluted to me. And okay, if Beterbiev is going to be out for a long, long time, and they want to bring in an interim champ, okay, well, why not have the interim champ fight Bivol? Why not have Bivol fight, the winner of Yarde and Buatsi? And then Beterbiev, when his knee is fixed, I mean, he's going to be 40 years of age when his knee's fixed, maybe they can fight. It all seems very sort of, well, typical of boxing, really, isn't it? We get all these sort of, it's like a spider's web, all these different strands all going off in different directions. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of this? Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think it's a needless idea? You tell me. Give me your opinions. And please, if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe. That'd be fantastic. That'd help us out a lot. I want to build the channel up, and also hit the like button if you like this video. There's plenty more videos for you to watch. And thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Bye for now.